Hello there, Lunar Squadron, and welcome back to the channel. Earlier today, we got another Jedi Survivor article / interview out of IGN as a part of their IGN First program, all leading up to this Friday's IGN Fan Fest, where we will be getting an extended look at Jedi Survivor. And in this article, we got a ton of exciting new information and new details about one of the main enemies of Jedi Survivor and what makes him tick. It is a Gendai named Rayvis. That's right, guys, we finally have confirmation that this is in fact a Gendai, one thing that we have long speculated since that gameplay trailer released back at the Game Awards. It has finally been confirmed, and his name is Rayvis, and this article provided so much cool insight into what makes him who he is and what his mission is in Jedi Survivor, and we're going to go over all of these details together. But first, if you're new to the channel, we would love to have you as always, and the way to do that, just go down below this video, hit that little subscribe button, the bell notification right on next to it. It will notify you every single time Andreas and I upload the latest and greatest Star Wars and Jedi Survivor content. Now, with all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump right into this article because there is a lot to talk about. Alright guys, if you haven't seen this article yet this morning, it is called Star Wars Jedi Survivor Meet the Gendai, and the subheadline is Cal Kestis' new nemesis is one of the toughest species in the galaxy. If you are familiar with the Gendai species, you will know that these guys are incredibly hard to kill. They were in the original Clone Wars series back in 2003, and you knew how hard it was for even Obi-Wan to be able to take one of these down, to take Dirge down. So, looks like we have a very formidable enemy to be going up against in Jedi Survivor. So let's go ahead. We're just going to read through the article together. It's a pretty lengthy article, but it provides a lot of great information about who this Gendai is and what exactly he's trying to accomplish and kind of what his vision is in Jedi Survivor. So let's just go ahead and read through it together. So the article starts off with, when the reveal trailer for Star Wars Jedi Survivor hit, internet speculation was ablaze about one very particular element of it, specifically a short bit at around the 44-second mark, in which a very large and imposing alien in a suit of armor looks Cal up and down with a bemused smirk on his face before ordering his henchmen. So we do have confirmation that that guy with this Gendai is actually one of the henchmen as a part of the Bedlam Raiders. This isn't like a two-man team. He is in fact just a regular henchman. He's nothing special. To remind Cal of why the Jedi are supposed to be dead. And then he talks about how that a lot of fans like us were speculating that this character was going to be a Gendai. He looked like a Gendai, and that's kind of what this author of this article talks about. And then this next paragraph that is important is where we finally get confirmation. He says, well, let's put an end to the speculation right now. Yes, that is a Gendai. No, he is not Dirge. His name is Rayvis, and he is just as menacing as you would think. To find out more, I talked with Respawn cinematic director Dori Arazi and lead writer Danny Homan to learn all about the Gendai race, who Rayvis is, and why his presence in Jedi Survivor is such an important element of the story. He continues with starting off with who are the Gendai. That is the main next point of his article. He says, first off, let's go into a little more detail about who the Gendai are. As I mentioned, they are a race of intergalactic nomads that are almost impossible to kill, and they live for thousands of years. But the reason why they're intergalactic nomads is because their peaceful home planet was ravaged and destroyed hundreds of years ago. With no place to call home, the surviving Gendai mostly took to bounty hunting, no doubt due to their incredibly tall stature and imposing nature. So we kind of get a little insight here as to perhaps what Rayvis is up to. We've long speculated that perhaps he was a bounty hunter, and it looks like a lot of what the Gendai turned out to do was in fact do bounty hunting. He continues with saying perhaps the most notable thing about them from a biological standpoint is that their bodies are made up entirely of a giant mess of regenerative tentacles. Those impressive suits of armor you see aren't so much meant to protect the Gendai, but rather keep them from spilling out, which is kind of gross when you think about it, but true. Obviously, this has some pretty interesting potential for a cool boss battles from a gameplay perspective, but for Arazi and Homan, they're also a super interesting race to explore narratively for a bunch of different reasons. So it sounds like when we come up against Rayvis as one of the boss battles or multiple boss battles, it kind of speculates here multiple boss battles. This guy's going to be really tough to take on. He's going to be a hard boss to get through. He continues with this next point where it's in their own mind and their own world, they're very chivalrous. What makes Gendai so interesting, in my own opinion at least, is that in their own mind and their own world, they're very chivalrous, Arazi said. They have a code they adhere to. It binds them to a certain code of honor for their conduct. It also binds them to their history and what's left of their people. So Rayvis is not just this gruff grunt number 7 who can take an army down. He's got a long past. He's seen a lot of history. He could be thousands of years old. He's seen empires rise and fall. He's seen the Jedi rise and fall. He's seen the rise of the actual empire itself. So he's got a lot of tragic history and a lot of depth that we try to explore. This is incredibly interesting. This guy has been around the block. He's been there. He's done that. This is really going to make his perspective on the world and the empire and the Jedi and how they all kind of work together very interesting in Jedi Survivor, because he's seen so much stuff. It also makes me wonder if our High Republic friend and this guy have ever crossed paths before, because the Gendai can live for so long. They clearly were alive together at one point, so I do wonder if there was an already established relationship, or if this is a relationship that will be fostered as they cross paths in Jedi Survivor, because we do know, even though Cal will be crossing paths with the Bedlam Raiders very early in his journey in Jedi Survivor, at some point that High Republic Jedi or former Jedi will be teaming up with this Gendai and the Bedlam Raider. So I'm very interested to see when their relationship is established within Jedi Survivor. He continues with, Homan agreed and added, there's a perspective to this species that's so long-lasting. Seeing the Republic turn into the Empire, and when we're thinking about Cal's journey and his own experience, any character he meets provides a new perspective on the Jedi and the Republic. So it seems like that is exactly what we're going to be getting, is Rayvis is going to have his own view and opinion on what the Jedi are and what they've done and what he's seen from them in the past. And he continues with, and Rayvis has seen it all, and so he knows, as any adversary might, the weaknesses of his enemies and how to exploit them. So this guy's seen the Jedi before. He's been around them for so long that he knows exactly how to handle them. This sounds like this boss battle is going to be incredibly hard, because not only is he going to be very difficult to kill from a gameplay perspective, it sounds like Respawn is trying to make this character in a way that he'll also know how to exploit your gameplay, how to exploit you as a character and take advantage of perhaps your weaknesses that you have while playing as Cal Kestis. So very interesting. The next portion of this article is called A Warrior Knows a Warrior. And he says there are some interesting parallels between Cal and Rayvis that the team at Respawn was excited to explore. For one, they both share the experience of being part of a people who have largely been wiped out. As Arazi puts it, there's something really charming about the juxtaposition between how Cal as a Jedi takes his struggle with his history and the history of his people, or let's say his kind, versus how Rayvis takes his history versus his kind. Cal has struggles and questions, and he tries to find his place, while Rayvis comes in very confident with who he is and what he is and why he's doing what he's doing. And that conflict is very sparky. It allows both of them to have a lot of reflection on who they are and what they are, where they're at, and what they're doing. This is very interesting, that they're kind of complementary of each other. They're both kind of going through the same thing. They've lost who they were, what they were a part of, their team, their clan. They've lost that element of themselves. But it seems like the Gendai, that Rayvis has had a lot longer of a time to deal with this trauma than Cal has, so he's at a lot further place than Cal is. He's confident about who he finally is in the galaxy, and that's kind of how he's going to carry himself through Jedi Survivor. But both of these characters are very similar. They come from very similar backgrounds, so it's going to be very interesting to see how Respawn resolves the conflict between these two characters. Reading through this article, what I'm really getting from this is Respawn is really taking their time to make a well-flushed out enemy who has objectives and ambitions beyond just Jedi are bad, let me just kill everybody. They're really taking the time to build up a very interesting and complex enemy and provide this background that's going to make this character just very complex, and it maybe even someone that Cal can sympathize with, which will make their interactions very, very interesting. And then he continues on. There's a couple more points to get through. He says, I asked if it's accurate to say that Cal and Rayvis are foils for each other, and was told that while it is true in some ways, in other ways they're very much not. Speaking of the relationship in the game, Homan adds that a warrior knows a warrior. And even though they're very different in stature, there's a mutual respect for that strength. So they're going to have a very interesting relationship in Jedi Survivor. They're kind of coming from the same place. They're both warriors. They're coming from a clan of people that they've lost. So there's going to be a lot of similarities, and it's going to be very interesting to see how those play out together as we progress through Jedi Survivor. And then he continues with, as someone who hadn't seen the Tarkovsky Clone Wars series, which I have no idea how you haven't seen that yet, I had little idea of who the Gendai were outside of a Wikipedia entry. What I did know was that a Google search for Gendai Jedi Survivor brought up a bunch of results of YouTube videos and Reddit threads of fans that were very excited about the idea of the Gendai being at the forefront of a major Star Wars story. It's very true. We are very excited to see an enemy of this type be at the forefront and one of the main enemies of Jedi Survivor. And then he provides one little more information tidbit about the Gendai and Rayvis in this game. He says, Homan continued, Rayvis and the Gendai are a perfect example of this, where there's a lot of really interesting species in Star Wars history, but Gendai are so interesting. They almost have this vampiric sense of time and place, and I think for Jedi Survivor that's really important, because this game takes place during these dark times. The rebellion is years and years away and people feel lost. And so, other than the Empire, to find a character that feels so sure of himself and his place in the galaxy is a really interesting opportunity. And it's by virtue of his species attributes being long-living and his fortitude, but also kind of his, I think, this survival mentality, you know? It takes a lot to remain true to yourself through the ebb and fall of a civilization in the rise of an empire. And he's been able to do that. And I think that's such a cool opportunity to be able to play with a character whose species are such survivors. Interesting use of the word survivors there, since the game is Jedi Survivor. So it does make me wonder if this Gendai Rayvis is going to play a bigger role in Jedi Survivor than just this big buff bad guy. That, you know, he's going to be a very complex character, and I'm really interested to see how his story unfolds throughout Jedi Survivor. Will he perhaps make a change, a turn? Will he team up with Cal eventually at the end? I don't know. It's very interesting here because it's clear that Respawn is setting up a very complex enemy for Cal Kestis to come across alongside that High Republic foe and whoever the Empire sends after him in this game. And then the last thing here to talk about, he says, Arazi added, from a visual perspective and a character-to-character perspective, Gendai are just fun. Because what do you do to them, right? Oh, I'm a powerful Jedi. I have a lightsaber. I'm going to slash you. It does nothing. The dialogue of the violent construct of this galaxy is completely different with this character. To close things out, Arazi left me with this regarding Rayvis and the Gendai. We're all heroes of our own story, and Rayvis is the hero of his own story. He doesn't perceive himself as a bad guy. He's chivalrous knight in this world, Homan added, which is something you can respect in a time period where people are so uncertain of the next day, let alone the next year. He kind of walks through it confidently and proud, and there's just something really kind of mystical about that. And then the article ends, but this article provided so many cool details and new insight into our new enemy, the Gendai, finally confirmed name Rayvis, and kind of what makes his tick and kind of what's pushing him through Jedi Survivor. You know, Arazi and Homan here were very insightful. They provided a lot of great details that I really appreciate because it just allows us to see kind of into the mind of what Respawn is trying to accomplish with Jedi Survivor and what they're trying to do with their enemies and create a very complex story. That really seems to be what the narrative team at Jedi Survivor is trying to accomplish, is present a very complex and well-told Star Wars story, and that seems to really be the case with how they are designing their enemies. So this was incredibly exciting. Let us know, guys, down below in the comments what your favorite aspect of this article, what you learned about our new Gendai friend Rayvis, what really got you going about this article, what makes you excited to come up across him in Jedi Survivor. And don't forget, this Friday is the IGN Fan Fest, where we will be getting a very extended look at Jedi Survivor. So definitely keep an eye on the channel this upcoming weekend. We're going to have a ton of exciting breakdowns and analysis of whatever we get from Respawn at IGN Fan Fest in regards to Jedi Survivor. It is going to be a very exciting weekend coming up. We cannot wait for that. So definitely, guys, keep an eye on the channel for that. Anyway, that is going to do it for me for this one. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, we will see you all next time.